Hey everyone, welcome to the Graced Health Podcast. This is a little different episode. As I mentioned in our first cool down episode of the season, the Graced Health Podcast will be wrapping up in a few weeks. And in these final weeks, I'm doing something a little different. I am introducing you to some of the podcasters I know and trust so that when this feed goes quiet, you already have somewhere to go. Today's guest is one of those people. Brittany Braswell is here, and I'm just so excited to have her here. She's a public speaker. She's a top-rated podcast host and creator of the Joy-Filled Eater course, where she helps Christian women break free from food guilt, body image struggles, and diet culture through a faith-centered, practical approach to food freedom. I love Brittany's just relatable and warm and engaging approach that she offers, and I know you guys will appreciate her as well. I am not bringing just anyone into this space. I think once you hear from Brittany, if you don't already listen to her, and I know some of you do, I think you'll understand why I want you to meet her before we wrap up here. So with that, I'm just going to welcome Brittany.
Thank you, Amy. It's such a joy to be back here. I know we were talking about before we hit record that it has been a minute since we have done a podcast recording together. We did one on your show several years back, and you've been on my show once or twice, getting to talk about what you do and some of your incredible books that you've written. So we get to talk on a much more regular basis. I'm excited for everyone to get a little peek into our friendship today, too.
Yeah, absolutely. I know it was astounding because I pulled up our last episode. How you have only been on here one time before now is confusing to me, which I can only blame myself. But it was back in October 2021, and the episode title was "How Do I Know If My Loved One Is Dealing with an Eating Disorder?" That was season 12,
That's
episode 21.
right.
So if
Oh, man.
you're listening and you're like, that sounds interesting, go back and listen to that because Brittany's wisdom is timeless for sure. And you and I have worked together behind the scenes on a lot of things, but I guess just not publicly. So here we are.
Yay.
Okay, so Brittany, I did not actually mention your show name, and I'm going to ask you to tell people what your show name is. And then I would love, since this is kind of an introduction episode, I would love for you to tell us about the women who listen to your show. Who are they? What do they need most? What are they really searching for right now? Like what's the problem? What's the pain point that they're having?
Yeah, so I host the Faith-Filled Freedom podcast. And back in, I don't think it had even launched back in 2021. We
I
launched it in
hadn't.
2022, and it used to be called the Joy-Filled Eater podcast. So if you come across either of those names, that's me. And just kind of like the name indicates, it is specifically a show geared towards women who want to take a Christ-centered approach to food freedom, body image, and really just diving into their relationship with the Lord and how that relationship is the foundation for having a healthy relationship with both food and your. And so I work with some women who, yes, I know on our last call or our last episode, we talked specifically about eating disorder recovery and how do you spot as a loved one. And so I do work with some women who have diagnosed eating disorders and are maybe have some pretty severe behaviors when it comes to food or exercise or other things. But the vast majority of women who listen to my show and that I work with are kind of in that in-between space between I have a really unhealthy relationship with food, whether they are finding themselves like emotionally eating or binge eating or overeating, to hey, I'm not happy with my body and I think I need to just eat less and move more and that's the fix. And so they have they have restricted their intake in some way. Maybe it's total caloric intake or cutting out certain food groups or types of foods, or they're really stuck in that clean junk, good food, bad food kind of mentality. And we have talked about this a lot. And I know it's a really easy place for women to get stuck in, especially when you are active or you have certain physical goals or strength goals, or even like if you're working on, it may not be, hey, I want to build a ton of muscle, but I want to improve my mobility, or I want to move to have more energy. Or I just got off a call with a girl that we talked about an episode, or in the episode of my show, we were talking about hormone health and fertility versus menopause and how does nutrition impact a lot of these things. And so we cover a lot when it comes to nutrition, but the core of it is we really look at how do we improve our physical health without throwing our mental health in the trash by creating a bunch of unnecessary and disordered food and body rules.
I really like how you said that, improve our physical health without throwing our mental health in the trash. Because, someone could be doing, you can take two women who are doing the same thing, and one of them may feel at peace about it. She may be like, all right, this is cool. And the other one may be totally, freaking out or, or shaming or, making her, like, okay, today was a good day. I was good. Or something
Mm-hmm.
like that. And so I appreciate that about you because, one thing I didn't say when I introduced you is you are a registered dietitian. You know this stuff. You know how food and nutrients and all of that impacts the body. We're just taking away that societal expectation and almost learning, and we are unlearning that and relearning how God designed us to have a relationship with food and with our bodies and with him. Would you say that that sums that up, or did I
Yeah.
leave anything out?
Yeah. No, absolutely. Because I would be remiss if I didn't say I do love talking about nutrition and physical health. I am a dietitian. That is what primary education and degree is in, but so much of the conversation around food and health gets so disordered so quickly. And it's always that the information it's bad is bad or inaccurate. Sometimes it's just the way that it is presented and how it feels when it's presented, going, you should eat this and not, or these foods are okay and these are not. And then that starts inducing a lot of guilt and shame. And I'm not eating the quote unquote one right, best, only
Right.
perfect way. We get all this shame and guilt. And then instead of moving our bodies for enjoyment, then for building strength and resilience, we start moving punishment a lot of times. So yes, I think you wrapped it up beautifully. I love talking about all of these different areas of our relationship or our physical, mental, and spiritual health and how the decisions we make every day and the way that we care for and withhold care from our body impacts all of this.
Mhm. Yeah, exactly. As you were talking, it made me think of there's kind of a running joke right now among midlife women. There's so much, thankfully, finally, so much information about perimenopause and menopause and all of that. And alongside of that, of course, is all of the nutritional guidelines, which, I think are helpful and good to know, but we might not need 782 grams of protein a day. Like,
Yes.
you know, and people are
Yes.
like, oh, this is a full-time job eating this much protein. And at the sacrifice,
Uh-huh.
like, yeah, because, like I, I've had full episodes on proteins. I've had, but at the same time, you still have to tune into what does your body need and how are you feeling with that? So,
Yes.
yeah.
And there's this happy, like, I want to say happy medium, but it's really kind of the messy middle where there's not like there's so much trial and error when it comes to nutrition, and there's not a right or wrong way, but it's recognizing how do I listen to my body? How do I recognize what it's telling me? And also, how do I not let my body be the bus driver?
Mhm.
So, how can I take into consideration? How can I recognize the signs it's giving me, the symptoms I'm experiencing? And then, how can I combine that with my relationship with the Lord and seeking discernment and making wise choices, and also having some very simple knowledge when it comes to nutrition, physical health, brain science. How do we simplify all these things and use them all together to make a choice rather than just saying, I'm going to eat when I'm hungry and stop when I'm full, when I'm, feeling full, or I'm only going to eat what sounds good, or I have to eat this way and not this way. So for so many women, it feels really complicated. And I love to try to take complicated things and simplify. And I know you do such a great job of that, Amy, especially when it comes to strength building and movement. And I think there's not enough people in this space that talk about, especially when we're talking about what does the Lord have to do with all of these decisions that we make? And the truth is everything. We
Right.
want to have him at the foundation of all of it. So yeah, I get, if you can't tell, I get excited about talking about these kind of things. So there's always more questions to be had, but it's very nuanced. So
Absolutely.
being able to approach it with curiosity instead of judgment, I think is really huge.
Yes. I completely agree with all of that. And so many times one topic will lead to another and kind of like, pulling the thread on something, which actually leads me into the other question that I wanted to ask, which is, what is a topic that you have covered on your show that kind of surprised you? Maybe you weren't either expecting to be talking about that, maybe how your audience responded, something that you discovered in making that. Like, but is there anything that's come up that you're like, oh, well, I didn't expect this?
Yes, actually. Very surprised, no intention of talking about this. I did an episode, I think it was like 145, 150, somewhere around there, where I talked about sex and body image. And I have never received so many DMs and emails going, oh my gosh, nobody's talking about this. Because so much of the way that we eat is in an attempt to make our bodies or feel a certain way because we think that's going to give me more confidence and that's going to improve my relationship with my spouse or that's going to make me feel more attractive. And so we talked about body image and how that affects. I did a couple of episodes on this because I got so much response after the first one. It was a solo episode. But I think that one was mostly focused on how does your body image affect your intimate relationship with your spouse, physically and otherwise. And then I had back on actually two of our other TSC coaches, Shayla and Lacey, came on and we talked about if you have ever, I probably watched, there's a couple of shows that I have watched that I probably shouldn't be watching, but one of them we renamed the episode "The Secret Sex Lives of Christian Wives," just because it was silly because we had so many people saying like, how does this actually play out on a day-to-day basis? Like when it comes to body image and your relationship with and your body and marriage, like is it just hunky-dory all the time? And so we had a super real conversation. The three of us met for our like annual retreat. And I don't even remember how the topic came up, but somebody had messaged me and they were like, I have questions about this particular thing. So we just hit record and had a conversation about it. And I think that one was close to 200 in the 190s. Those have surprised me. Never in a million years did I intend to talk about sex. And we don't go into anything like vulgar or overly, personal, but we do talk about how does the way that you see and relate to your body impact relationships, even to the point where how does the way that you connect with your husband, how does that spill over into other areas of your life and your stress and your hormones? Those have just been very interesting conversations. It's been interesting to hear so many questions and feedback going, nobody talks about this. Why doesn't this get talked about more? So those have been surprisingly fun.
Good for you. Good for you for having that conversation. I have had simmering for a long time. I was like, I would like to have some sort of a conversation about sexual health because
Mm-hmm.
it is important, and especially as our body changes and just the physiological changes that go along with it. And I'm so sorry, listeners, if you're like, yes, Amy, you should have done that. I never got around to it. But
Maybe we'll have you back on my show and we'll have a third
yeah.
conversation.
Brittany, one of the reasons I wanted to have you on is it's very important to me to have a gentle landing to Graced Health. I care so much about my community, and it's very difficult for me to leave them, and I don't want to do it irresponsibly, which is one reason why you're on, because if people are interested in learning more about food freedom or releasing the shame or integrating that nutrition aspect in without crossing over into diet culture, and they want to listen more to the Faith Filled Freedom podcast, where would you have them start? Like, is there a certain episode? Is there a certain series? Kind of
My
give
goodness.
us, help us navigate that.
Yeah. So I have done a handful of series on different topics. So depending on the topic that you're most interested in, I did a body trust series, and that had to do with like, how do I really get back? Like, how do I get to the point where I can actually trust what my body is communicating with me? I think that series is in the first, the 70s of those episodes. Nutrition specifically is something you're interested in, and the gentle nutrition approach that I take when it comes to how do we work on improving our physical health through nutrition without it turning into a bunch of, rigid food rules. I did an 8 or 10 part series on that starting around episode 30. And that just dives into different areas of nutrition. But if you have to only start in one spot, I would point y'all to episode 186, because in that episode, I really focused on how can you heal your relationship with food in pockets of your day. I feel like it's so easy nowadays to fill up our schedules, to have no margin on our calendar, to feel like we've got our kids and all of the things, or we have grandkids, or we have events going on at our church, or places we're volunteering, or our jobs, or all of the above. And it's so easy to make the excuse to say, hey, I don't even have time to focus on this or to devote to my physical or mental or spiritual health. Or maybe it's not from that mindset. Maybe you say, like, I really want to do this, but logistically, I just don't understand how to make it happen. I spent some time in that episode focusing on what are some ways that you can do that in those short, like 3 to 5 to 10 or 15-minute pockets of your day where you are in the car going to the grocery store, or you're dropping a kid off at school, or you're at a doctor's appointment, or you get 5 minutes to yourself in the bathroom if you have small children. Like, how can we use those small little pockets to do something for yourself, for your physical, mental, and spiritual health when it comes to repairing those relationships with food, your body, and Jesus? So if that can only point you to one spot, that's probably a really great starting place. If you know, hey, I want to continue growing and improving, but I don't have an hour a week to go, drive across town and go to a session with somebody or attend a call every week. Like, I need something I can do in my own time. That's a really great place to start.
Yeah. Kind of like, like I did an episode on fitness snacking. So it's kind of like snacking to improve your,
Yes,
it's
I
very
love
meta.
that. I love it, love it.
Those are great to have, and we will put those in the show notes. Brittany, anything else that you would like us to know before we sign off?
Well, I want to just say thank you, Amy, for all the incredible work that you have done. What is it, like 10 years or
10
something at
years.
this point
Yeah.
on the podcast? I mean, that's incredible. The number of women who are probably listening to this episode that have been following along with you for years that might not ever get to tell you thank you. I'll tell you thank you for them, because you've been doing some beautiful work and I appreciate it. I point people to the show on a regular basis, so it's fun to get to. It's such an honor to be able to be here in the last phase of it as you get ready to just choose to let go of something. We talked about this offline, and I was telling you my private practice is in a shifting season right now. I feel like there's lots of things happening. And I think one of the things I mentioned to you is it seems a lot harder to say no to something now, or like to stop something, than it is to start something. So I'm going to encourage the listeners with that same piece of advice or encouragement is it's really easy and almost this point of pride or accomplishment to say, look at all the things I'm doing. And I just want to challenge you to do a little personal audit and see, what do I need to stop doing? What do I need to lay down? Is there anything that is hindering my relationship with the Lord or with my body or with food from a practical or a spiritual standpoint? Because sometimes saying no is a lot harder than saying yes, because it feels like I'm letting something go. I think I have capacity to do it. I have the energy to do it. I should be doing it.
Yeah.
And so just challenging yourself to take some of those shoulds off and ask the Lord what would actually be beneficial for me right now.
Yeah. That's so good. Well, thank you for your kind words. I, of course, point people to you all the time as well. And when I heard your Voxer on that, which is an audio message, like kind of ping ponging back and forth with audio, if you're not familiar with it. And when you said it's harder to say no to something than it is yes, I went, oh, yes, that's so what it is. But I also am 10 years older than I was when I started. And so I know this feeling that God has given me, and I'm responding a little quicker. A little quicker. It's still been a year in the works, but yeah, and I'll talk more about that on the last episode. But yeah, it is hard. It is hard, but we will see. I don't know. Who knows what God has next for me, but he does, and I trust him. So
So good. So good. Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been such an honor and a blessing to get to have a conversation with you today, and hopefully to give you guys that are listening a little bit of encouragement.
Yes. All right. Go check out Brittany and the Faith Filled Freedom podcast. And that is all for today. Go out there and have a graced day.